So let's talk about the top of the world, the Arctic. It's one of our last great wildernesses, but it's under enormous pressure from a warming planet and ever-growing economic demands. It begs the question, who is actually in charge up there? Let's dig in.
I mean, with so much on the line, you gotta wonder, who's really writing the rules for the Arctic? And, well, it turns out it's not so simple. Governing the top of the world is kind of like a massive, complex puzzle with a few key players you really need to know about.
So, let's start at the very top, the 30,000-foot view. This is our first layer of governance, the Global Guardians. These are the international groups where nations come together and try to set the ground rules for the entire region.
And it makes sense, right? I mean, think about it. A polar bear or a pod of whales doesn't exactly stop and check its passport at a border crossing. That's precisely why this kind of international cooperation is so absolutely essential for managing resources and threats that affect everyone.
Okay, a fantastic example of this in action is the International Whaling Commission, or the IWC, and their mission? It's totally laser-focused: protect whale populations and manage any whaling that happens anywhere on the globe.
And wow, you can really see the impact it had. If you look back before the 1980s, so many whale species were just getting hammered. Some were right on the brink of collapse. But then, in 1986, the IWC drops this game-changing ban on commercial whaling. And the result? A slow, but thankfully steady recovery for some of these incredible animals. And if you want to put a number on that success, get this. Since the ban, the bowhead whale population in some parts of the Arctic has been growing by about 3%. Every single year. I mean, that's a huge deal. It's a really powerful testament to what can happen when countries actually work together.
But, it's not just about one species at a time. There's a bigger group on the scene, and that's the Arctic Council. This is like the main table, where the big picture issues for the entire region get hashed out. We're talking everything from climate change to sustainable development.
So, who gets a seat at this important table? Well, these are the key players. Now, why these 8 countries? Simple. They are the only nations with actual territory inside the Arctic Circle, and that gives them a direct say in shaping the region's future.
All right, so that's the big international picture. But what happens down on the ground, within each country's own borders? Well, that brings us to our next piece of the puzzle, the national rule books.
Right, so each of those 8 Arctic nations has its own toolkit, its own set of laws and regulations to manage its slice of the Arctic pie. And really, their main job is this constant tightrope walk, trying to find that incredibly tricky balance between economic development and protecting the environment.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Take Alaska's fishing industry, for example. To keep the fish populations healthy, the government uses this kind of 3-step playbook. First off, they make fishing licenses really expensive, which limits how many boats are out there. Next, they set super strict limits, or quotas, on how many fish can actually be caught. And finally, they close the fisheries during breeding season to give the fish a chance to replenish. It's all part of this carefully managed system designed to keep things sustainable.
Okay, but it's not just governments and big international councils calling all the shots. There's a third, really crucial player in this whole thing, and they operate from the outside. These are the independent watchdogs, or, as you probably know them, NGOs.
So, an NGO, a non-governmental organization, is pretty much what it sounds like. It's totally independent of any government. It's usually funded by donations from the public, and its entire reason for existing is to champion a specific cause, like, protecting the environment.
And this is where you can really see the big difference between them and governments. Governments, right? They're funded by taxes and are supposed to represent the national interest. Their power comes from making and enforcing laws. NGOs, on the other hand, totally different story. They run on donations, they fight for a single cause, and their power comes from a completely different source: public pressure.
You've definitely heard of Greenpeace, right? Yeah, their whole strategy is built around direct action and getting people's attention. By organizing protests against things like oil drilling in these really sensitive Arctic waters, they can put a massive global spotlight on the risks and basically force everyone to talk about it.
So, as you can see, the tactics are often, let's be honest, designed to make some noise and be disruptive. They'll organize protests right there on the water, sometimes literally getting in the way of ships. All of it is designed to get the world's media to pay attention, because that attention creates public pressure, and that pressure can actually force governments and huge corporations to rethink their plans.
All right, so let's pull this all together. We've got our 3 main players: the international councils making the big rules,
the national governments managing their own turf, and the independent NGOs acting as watchdogs. And all of them? They're caught in this giant, constant balancing act.
Now, this is where things get really tricky, especially for the governments. They are stuck right in the middle of this massive tug of war, pulled in two completely different directions by a fundamental conflict of interest. Okay, so on one side of the scale, you've got this super urgent need for protection, saving fragile ecosystems, preserving traditional ways of life, and making sure the Arctic is healthy for the long haul. But then, on the other side of that same scale, is the powerful pull of development, creating jobs, generating tax revenue, and securing energy supplies to grow the economy. And, as you can probably guess, those two goals are almost always at odds with each other.
And that, right there, is why protecting the Arctic is so incredibly difficult. There's no magic wand here. It's just this constant, ongoing negotiation between all three of those players. You need the big international agreements. You need the national laws to manage things on the ground. And you absolutely need the watchdogs to keep everybody honest. Which, of course, leaves us with the biggest question of all. As the planet keeps warming and our hunger for resources just keeps growing, can this delicate balance actually hold? Is it even possible to protect this incredible wilderness while also supporting the people who call it home? The future of the top of the world literally depends on the answer.